Thanks for checking out the Brad and John Show podcast. This segment of the show is brought to you by John Combest's book, Stalking, Harassment, Internet Trolling, A Guide to Recovering and Rebuilding After Online Attacks. It's a great reference if you've ever been the unfortunate target of a social media attack. It's available on Amazon. Just search John Combest. That's C-O-M-B-E-S-T, John Combest, and the book will show up in your search results. Now it's time for another segment of the Brad and John Show. Can you handle it?
It's me, Egbert, once again. I'm the new owner of this station. I went out and hired the best talk radio consultant, Jeff Allen from News Talk STL, and told him to hire the worst talent he could find. Jeff did exactly as I told him. Ladies and gentlemen, here are Brad and John.
The worst Brad and John. Not just mediocre or, so-so. We're the worst, John. What do you think of that?
Well, I think we should ask the rest of the J3 what they think. Like, we have one of the J's, but what about the rest of the J3?
Oh, you can't bother with Joe Rush. Joe Rush wouldn't even talk to you. He wouldn't even give you the time of day. Hey,
well, that's the way it should be then.
He would call you. What's the term for that? He would call you. What is it when you're he'd call you riffraff. That's what he'd call you, riffraff.
Oh, yeah. Irrelevant.
Right, irrelevant. Okay, it is the Brad and John Show. Our web address is I can never get this right. bjshow.co. I'm just going to I'm going to tattoo it on my hand. Just look at it.
But put it on your forehead, but do it in reverse so that when you look in the mirror, it reads correctly.
Right. bjshow.co. John Combest does a website every single day of his life for the past 22 years. And I mean every single day. Christmas, New Year's Eve, New Year's morning, Easter, when he's out with the bunnies. He puts up this list, a very substantial list of all the important news stories that are flying around the state of Missouri, be it on radio, TV, internet, even stuff from KWMU he's got on there, St. Louis Public Radio. He's got it all on there. And we start up the show every morning where recently we've cut a really big deal with Casey Kasem's estate, where Casey Kasem comes in and what's your name again? What's the name of what do you call yourself?
I'm Casey Kasem.
And he comes in every morning, and what does he do?
And here they are.
And he counts them down, and we start with number...
In third place...
The St. Louis Post-Dispatch editorial board is big mad today, Brad. Governor Mike Parson this afternoon is going to be making an announcement about immigration. And it's anticipated that the governor will talk about perhaps sending National Guard troops down to Texas in support of Operation Lone Star to help protect the U.S. border. Now, the Post-Dispatch editorial board is big mad because they say what they want to hear from Governor Parson is Governor Parson calling out Republicans for not being reasonable, House Republicans not supporting the very reasonable Joe Biden position to spend a little bit more at the border. And the Post-Dispatch editorial board also calls out Republican members of the congressional delegation for voting to impeach Secretary Mayorkas for the border debacle. So that's the lead Post-Dispatch editorial today, and that's our number 3 story.
And moving along.
Up a notch to number 2.
Some national media attention for the St. Louis area, this time something not involving crime, per se. The New York Times is featuring the Cori Bush versus Wesley Bell Democratic primary. This story was sent to me by a Democrat. You know how I am, Brad. I'm funny about things. I don't like to mention people's name on the air who send me things. But a prominent Democrat sent me the story that I had happened to miss, and they sent it to me and said, you might want to highlight this.
John, let's be honest. It's okay that you're friends with Bill Clinton. I mean, let's just be honest. It's okay. You don't have to hide that.
Well, he goes through Chelsea because he figures that's a little bit safer way to do it.
A little bit of a buffer there, right? Yeah.
But so, these pieces are important. Again, not that they sway the St. Louis City or St. Louis County voter, but they're a valuable tool for both Cori Bush and Wesley Bell, particularly Wesley Bell, to send to donors and say, look, even the New York Times is writing about how I have a chance in this race. So pretty important for a New York Times reporter to do an in-depth story. And the piece makes Wesley look pretty favorable here.
And, of course, we're moving along to the number 1.
The number 1.
The number 1 story yesterday came from Kansas City. And unless folks were living under a rock, they surely saw it on social media or they heard about it in their car and on their radio or on their television. A shooting after the Kansas City Chiefs parade yesterday. The numbers are still coming out. Police haven't reported a number of specifics, but for anybody who missed it, there was a shooting after the Chiefs parade. There were roughly 800,000 people, from what I read, at this grand event in Kansas City. What's unique today, Brad, is that today at 7:35, our friend Pete Mundo over in Kansas City, he has a standing interview weekly with the mayor, I believe it's weekly, with the mayor of Kansas City, a Democrat named Quentin Lucas comes on. It's a nice opportunity for a pretty liberal guy, the mayor, to come on a conservative talk show and answer tough questions. So at 7:35 today, Pete will have the mayor of Kansas City on. Surely, obviously this is going to be the topic to talk a little bit more about what we know so far and what's to come.
And what station is Pete on?
He's on the call letters are KCMO.
Oh yeah,
and you can
KCMO.
listen to that at kcmotalkradio.com.
Right. Okay. That whole story. I mean, let's talk about that for a moment. First off, the lady who was killed was a DJ on KKFI. For those of you who are not familiar with the Kansas City radio scene, KKFI is not a commercial station. KKFI is a not-for-profit, donor-supported radio station, unlike St. Louis Public Radio, but that's a whole nother
It's more
story.
like a KDHX,
I
right?
was just going to say that, yes. It's like a KDHX kind of station where they have a variety of shows on there. And, if you listen on a Tuesday at 3 o'clock, it may be polka music, and Wednesday at 4 o'clock, it might be, glam rock, or, it's just a little bit of everything. And young lady, 2 kids, very, very, very sad. And she wasn't killed immediately. They got her to the hospital. She was still alive. She died in surgery. I think the thing that's very problematic for me is that when I was watching and listening to some of the news conferences last night, they were talking about, at one point in time, I think it was the police chief or the fire chief who was talking about the hospitals that they sent the victims to, 3 different hospitals. One of the hospitals was a children's hospital. They were quizzed down about the fact that, okay, how many children at that point in time? They weren't saying. I think it was what they say, 11 children were shot?
11, I think. Yeah, the latest number I saw was 11 children.
I mean, how sad.
Between 6 and 15, yeah.
How sad is this? I mean,
very much.
I mean, you as a parent, me as a parent, my kids are older, yours are young. I mean, you just go like, okay, you're going to an event. It's a big happy time for your city. Your city just won the Super Bowl. And some lunatic, or many lunatics, and, already, I hate to say this, but there's a theory behind this already. And if I bring this up, some people are going to go, I can't believe he's talking about this. Mm-hmm. It's the transsexual thing. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Because the last shooter was the last thing that happened, 2 days before that, was a transsexual?
And the lady in Nashville, remember that whole story?
Oh,
where
yeah.
She went to the church was a transsexual.
Yep.
And supposedly the interesting thing on that is that there's a whole story behind the fact that she kept a very in-depth diary, and they've got the diary and they won't release it. And the interesting part of it is that once the situation, if we're talking about Joel Osteen's church, I didn't realize this, but he has several services there on Sunday, and they have a Sunday afternoon service which is in Spanish. Obviously, in Houston, they have a lot of Spanish-speaking people there, and this lady was a former parishioner of the church, and she showed up with her kid, and she pulls out a rifle, and she starts shooting, and luckily, they had a couple off-duty police who were working secondary, who were working security, and they took her out. Unfortunately, they shot her son in the head, and he's in critical condition and probably will not live. Let's talk about that for a minute. How would you like to be one of those police officers who essentially saved many lives, but ultimately shot a kid in the head?
And has that on their conscience.
Yes.
Yeah,
I mean,
for
sure.
sure.
Everybody talks about, these police, they're terrible people. I'm telling you, I wouldn't want to do that job, because you get put in situations like this where, once again, I know the police officers are heroes, but that guy, and there will be a point when they will know exactly which officer shot the kid, because when they do the ballistics after the
they'll be able to identify it. Go back to the transgender theory though, Brad.
Well, what happens is when this happens, the news stories disappear.
For sure, yeah. And so, we also know anytime something like this happens, and it's become a cliche, that if the shooter would happen to be white, it's an example of white supremacy and angry white men and racism and why are white men going crazy with their guns. If indeed the shooters are black, then the problem, of course, is guns. It has nothing to do with the person who perpetrated the crime. It has to do with the fact that they had access to guns. And why is Missouri so terrible? And we've already seen this. So I have a link up today. One of the reporters from the Kansas City Star hopped on immediately to Twitter, and his direct quote is, "As the policy discussion develops, one thing to keep in mind is the extent to which Missouri severely restricts the ability of local governments to enact their own rules on firearms."
Well,
so automatically, knee-jerk, the problem here are Missouri communities, lawmakers, and legislators.
Well, okay, let's make a couple parallels here, okay? First off, and in the press conference, yes, Mayor Q, as they call him, came out and said, the problem is with guns. Okay. We had a situation here, and you know what? You and I didn't talk about this, and this didn't. I don't know why this didn't. This didn't get much play yesterday, but unfortunately, it made the national news today. After the Drake concert, you know about this story?
No, huh?
You don't know about this?
What the Drake concert?
Drake.
Eli Drinkwitz?
No, Drake. D-R-A-K-E. Drake. You know.
Oh, Drake. Oh, yeah,
right.
The guy that got. There was a shooting. Wasn't it like a 15-year-old?
No, there was a car accident where
a car accident, but wasn't there like a 15-year-old girl got killed?
Well, a mother and daughter who were from Chicago came down here to watch the Drake concert. They were hit by a car. A guy was flying through downtown St. Louis. Witnesses say he blew all sorts of red lights, was going like twice the speed limit, and hit another car. Car spun around, killed the mother and daughter. I believe what they're saying sounded like they were killed instantly. And here we go again. You know, I mean, and once again, we had the situation last year where we had the unfortunate situation. A young lady and her family were in town. She was in, what, was she basketball? Was that basketball?
Oh, volleyball, I think.
Volleyball. And knucklehead who should have been in jail but wasn't because of the fact that he had the ankle bracelet, which wasn't the story that he sawed it off or something like that.
And it was still under Kim Gardner administration.
Right, and he'd violated his parole like 82 times, and I'm not exaggerating. It was like at least 50 times. They nailed him and stuff like that. And he went flying through downtown St. Louis. They were coming out of this case was coming out of the Dome. The tournament was at the Dome. And same kind of situation, lost control of his car, hit a couple cars, the car flipped over, rolled over and crushed her, and they had to amputate her legs. Okay, this is pretty much the same situation. The guy's flying through downtown St. Louis. Now, here's the interesting thing. Why don't they talk about that? Why don't they talk about speeding cars? We have to. Right. Now, the nutbag in California he came out and said, we're going to make the cars so they can't go more than 10 miles an hour over the speed limit.
That's right.
I mean, once again, I will say this, and I know I get in trouble with people when I say this. This is Brad's little theory. Freedom is messy. When you give people freedom, most people do good things. Most people don't grab a gun and go shoot at an event where you're celebrating your teams won the Super Bowl. Most people don't go flying through downtown St. Louis after a concert or after a sporting event and lose control of their car because they're doing like twice the speed limit, running stop signs. Most people don't do that. And I think what's so frustrating about that is that, you know, once again, whoever these guys are, and I think they said they have 3 people. I've heard a couple different reports. There's some eyewitnesses that claim that there were people that actually saw these. They say they have 3 people in custody. Yeah. They actually saw shots being fired. They said they saw guns in these guys' hands, and these heroes, if it is true, tackled them and held them down until police showed up. Okay, once again, they don't care about laws. They don't care about, you know, I mean, what law are you going to put in effect that's going to stop them from doing nutbags, things like that? Nothing.
Yeah, they did not purchase these guns legally. They didn't go to a gun shop and purchase these.
Right, and the sad part of it is like the situation is if you read the story, and once again, let's go back to the old Joel Osteen thing. I read this long article that talked about that this lady, she lived with her son, and she was just an absolute positive nutcase. And her neighbors were always complaining about her, always going to the police, always going to this, always going to that. And once again, nothing ever happened because of the fact that well, we really can't do anything. Well, you know, and time after time after time, the article went in depth about how she was doing all sorts of crazy stuff. How did she get a gun? And I think what's going to come out from that is that she bought it legally. That she went and passed a background check and the whole bit, and she walked away with it. And once again, she's got an AR-15. Well, here we go again. You know, I mean, there's a, I don't know if you've ever seen all these crazy compilation videos. There's a video out there of all these lawmakers, and they're all Democrats, talking about guns. And what's the one? Who was? I think it was. Pocahontas. You know.
Elizabeth Warren.
Where she makes the comment that you don't shoot you don't use a assault weapon for an AR-15 for hunting, because if you shoot the animal, it cooks it as it shoots it.
And it would destroy the meat. That's what people that don't understand anything about guns
And
say.
once again, not being the gun expert that I am, but an AR-15 shoots a .223 round, or NATO a .556 round. A .223 round, it's essentially the numbers. It's like a .223. It's .223 inches. Okay, it's less than a quarter inch. If you got your little plinking guns that you go, if your grandpa took you to the shooting range, hey, let's go take you to the shooting range. Chances are he had a .22 long rifle, which is a little tiny bullet, which essentially is what the AR-15s fire. Now, obviously, it has a much powerful case, and it has a lot of gunpowder, and the gun, the round shoots at much faster muzzle velocity than a .22 long rifle, but it's a little tiny bullet. And the reason they went to that, you know what the reason for this is?
No, I don't.
The reason for this is that in World War II, the gun that most of which was the M1 Garand, or even the M1 carbine, they were larger, typically larger than .30 caliber. In other words, they were about a third of an inch in diameter. The reason for going to the .223 round is it's smaller and it's lighter, and they can carry more ammunition. The problem in World War II, that M1 Garand was a very big and heavy and large gun, and you had to carry ammunition was heavy. When they went with the AR-15 style rifle, which is the M16 or the M4 in the military version, it's much lighter, it's much smaller, and the ammunition is smaller and lighter. So a field, a rifle company, like in the Marines or something like that, can carry a lot of ammunition with them and not weigh themselves down with the guns and with the ammunition as much as back in the old days. And that's why they went with the smaller guns. But now, next break, I want to bring up Joe Buck, because I wonder if Joe Buck is getting pushback. And there's two things I want to talk about. And
okay, I can't wait.
Well, and I'm not here to give Joe Buck grief, but he went on. We'll talk about it next break. We're behind anyway. Do I sound like an angry guy this morning?
No, not at all. Hey, this is what people don't pay to listen to, Brad. They pay the medium bucks to listen to this.
Yeah, whatever. Okay, we're gonna take a break. It is you know what? I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna
Thanks for checking out the Brad and John Show podcast. This segment of the show is brought to you by John Combest's book, Stalking, Harassment, Internet Trolling, A Guide to Recovering and Rebuilding After Online Attacks. It's a great reference if you've ever been the unfortunate target of a social media attack. It's available on Amazon. Just search John Combest. That's C-O-M-B-E-S-T, John Combest, and the book will show up in your search results. Now it's time for another segment of the Brad and John Show. Can you handle it?